Mars has always captured our imagination ever since we first looked up into the night sky. The world which we first thought was ruled by aliens. Then we thought it was a barren rock, but now we know it is a lot more than meets the eye. Mars was named after the Roman god of war for its red colour, and has been known since ancient times. It is a bright orange dot hanging in the sky, and if it's close to the horizon it can have a deep red colour, and that's probably what the Romans thought when they were naming Mars. Blood and all the things that happen in war. So Mars orbits at about 228 million kilometers from the Sun, and it takes 687 days roughly to complete one orbit. As you can see from these pictures, is that Mars's orbit is far from circular. You can see where it is now, which is its furthest point, and when I said its closest point down at the bottom. That can lead to more extreme season changes than the other planets. Mars has a similar day length to Earth at roughly 24.5 hours, and this is just one of the many similarities that this planet has to Earth. It also has a very similar axial tilt to Earth, and it's tilted to the plane of the solar system by 25 degrees. Earth, on the other hand, is tilted by 23 degrees, and so Mars has very similar seasons to Earth, except they last a bit longer because it's further away from the Sun. Mars is about 6,780 kilometers across, which is just over half the size of Earth. But even though it's about 50% the size of Earth, it's only about 10% the mass of Earth, which is a bit of an anomaly. And so that means it has the lowest density by a long way of the inner planets, of only 3.93 grams per centimeter cubed. Now this is really strange because all the inner planets are made out of the same stuff, right? So why is Mars so much less dense than the other three inner planets? As we have known ever since we first looked at Mars in the night sky, the surface is very red and rusty. And the reason for this is exactly what I said. Rust of iron oxide all over the surface of Mars today, and that's what gives it its red colour. It is rust. It's not just the redness of the surface of Mars that makes it fascinating. There are so many interesting features on the surface of Mars that need to be picked out. One of the most striking things that we see about Mars are its volcanoes. It has clearly had past volcanic activity on its surface. Now this region that I am zooming in on Mars at the moment is called Tharsis. You can see that there are 4 volcanoes in this picture. The 3 on the right from top to bottom are Ascraeus Mons, Pavonis Mons, and Arsia Mons. And of course, in the top left is the very famous Olympus Mons, the highest volcano that we know of and the highest mountain in the solar system, at nearly 22 kilometers high. Another interesting thing about Mars are its polar ice caps. And it is the only world other than Earth in the solar system that we know has defined polar ice caps. For reasons that we don't fully understand yet, as far as I know, the south polar ice cap is a lot bigger than the southern polar ice cap. Now these ice caps are actually made mostly of normal ice that we find on Earth, water ice, but it is covered by a layer of frozen carbon dioxide, or as we know it on Earth, dry ice. Now there's a lot more water ice at the north polar cap than the southern polar cap. Now Mars has a very thin atmosphere. It's only 1% as dense as Earth, and so the surface pressure is a lot lower. However, this very thin atmosphere is still thick enough to produce significant weather, and in fact it produces global dust storms, and these happen every northern spring. The whole planet is shrouded in a gigantic dust storm. It is truly spectacular. Now Mars has two moons that orbit it, Phobos and Deimos. They orbit pretty close to the planet. They seem to be captured asteroids, but I will be going onto these two moons in a future video. Hopefully it'll come out soon after I finish the planets series. Now, spacecraft in the past have seen a lot of things on its surface, but one of the big features that Mars has on it is evidence that water flowed on it in the past. Zooming in here on the Vallis Marineris, this is a huge scar across the planet. It is far bigger than any canyon ever on Earth, and it would stretch all the way across the contiguous United States if it was on Earth. Now, there are scars like this all over Mars, not anywhere near to the same size, but they are similar in that they have been all carved out by liquid water. And we know this because water makes exactly the same footprint on Earth, and so we therefore conclude that this gigantic scar over Mars has been caused by the action of running water across the surface. And so, of course, we conclude that Mars, in its past, was very watery and wet, just like Earth is today. And we think that in the northern hemisphere of the planet, there was a huge ocean that covered about a fifth of the Martian surface. That's a big ocean. Obviously, it doesn't cover as much as water covers the Earth today, but it's still a significant amount of water. But we think this water probably disappeared around about 2 billion years ago, when Mars started losing its atmosphere. And we'll get onto this now, actually. Now, obviously, as I've been saying, we think Mars in the past was much warmer and wetter. Now, this is because Mars had a key ingredient that Earth still has today that it lost back then, and this is a magnetic field. Now, today, Mars does not have a magnetic field. The spiraling flow of magnetically conducting liquid is a dynamo, and a dynamo produces a magnetic field. That's what we have on Earth, that's what causes the aurora. Billions of years ago, we think Mars had a magnetic field too. Not having a magnetic field means Mars is exposed to the sun's harsh radiation, and we have found using the MAVEN spacecraft, which arrived at Mars in 2013, is that this is having adverse effects on Mars's atmosphere. The solar wind is slowly stripping Mars of its atmosphere at a rate of about 2 kilograms per second. In billions or even hundreds of millions of years' time, Mars could end up like a second Mercury, a barren rock with no atmosphere. So in the past, Mars must have had a much thicker atmosphere, and therefore a thicker atmosphere means higher surface pressure, and higher surface pressure means water can exist as a liquid. And that is why Earth has liquid water on its surface, because the atmosphere is dense enough. Mars now, of course, does not have a dense enough atmosphere to support water. So that is the strongest evidence possible that Mars in the past was a water world. And you know what they say? Where there is water, there is life. When we first saw Mars through a telescope, we thought that aliens were watching us with envious eyes, and it inspired several books like War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. But as soon as we started sending spacecraft there in the 1960s and 70s, we found that Mars was not so populated by aliens. And for a while after the Viking missions, we didn't really explore Mars much because we thought it's not an interesting world like we thought it might be. But that has changed in the 2000s. We now think that Mars in the past had life because of the presence of these watermarks, and we still find water on the surface of Mars today, albeit in tiny amounts, and of course it's not liquid. There is still a place on Mars where liquid water can exist, and that is at somewhere called the Hass Basin. Now, the Hass Basin is a huge impact crater on Mars. It is so deep that you could put Mount Everest in the center and the summit would not reach the top rim of the crater. It is 1,500 kilometers across, and of course Lower altitudes mean higher atmospheric pressure, and indeed the atmospheric pressure is so high at the bottom of the Hass Basin that it is possible for liquid water to exist. Now all this is excitement about life and the previous conditions of Mars. Mars is one of the most exciting worlds in the solar system, and it's so exciting that we are already preparing to go there as humans. Now it would be amazing if humans could land on Mars, could land on another planet for the first time. It really would be a step out into the unknown, and I hope we progress towards it. There would be a lot of challenges to face there, but humanity can overcome it, and I hope to see it happen. Mars has been visited by 26 different spacecraft in the past, and there will be a lot more to come. We have still more questions than answers about this most exciting little planet. Thank you everyone so much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. And next time we'll be heading to the outer solar system, to the more mysterious and giant worlds of the solar system. I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Son of a bitch. That's what's making my hand sticky. My god.